Well, it's interesting because I've always thought that great art was a club. Because obviously there's objectivity. Like there is just bad art. Like I was a kid when I was really little. I remember I'd be in like those museums where they had like little pieces that would sell for like $1 billion.
Mm.
And I would go up to my mom and dad and say like, "Wait, why is this piece like you know what I mean? Like there's just some naturally bad art that makes there's no reason for it to be like selling at an auction house. You'd be like, I'm in kindergarten, I can draw lines like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I always thought that great art was a club, and that's when subjectivity comes in.
Let me give you
So
an anecdote. Just save your thought. Remember what you were going to ask me here. Let me just give you an anecdote about that. On my Cosmoetica E-list about 10 years ago, I had a couple of guys from England. And one of the guys they were both buddies, and one of the guys was a bit better of a poet. The other was a lesser poet. The better poet was a bit more fucked up. The lesser poet wrote some really bad stuff. So, and I'm not going to say who it is, but you could look on my Cosmoetica. What is it? Where I keep my good poems. I don't even remember the name anymore. I've done so much shit. I can't remember all the shit I've done. But anyway, he sent me this poem, and this was maybe the 10th, 12th, 15th poem that he sent. And he kept asking me, Dan, what should I do with this one? And I'd say, well, if you remove this line and move that here. And after about 20 emails, and the last 10 of them within an hour of whatnot, I basically had rewritten about 3/4 of his poem. And it's not a great poem, but it's a good, solid, passable poem. Verse Magnifique, that's where I put the poems that people submit. And it's been, I think, been a year since I had one poem, and I've only added maybe 2 poems in the last 5 years because I get so much shit. But this guy sends this poem, and I said, it's a good poem. And he was so ecstatic that he got on Verse Magnifique. He sent me, I don't know how many goddamn pieces of doggerel. And then he acted like he suddenly was a great poet. And he started sending me more shit. I said, why are you sending me this shit? And he said, yeah, but I'm a great poet now, or what? I'm like, no, you're not, you idiot. It doesn't work that way. Just because even if you had written the poem that I put online, which is a good, solid poem, even if that had been all you, that doesn't make you. Every so often, bad artists or mediocre artists will do something good, or sometimes there's a collaborative effort that makes something good. This does not mean that you get a free pass or whatnot. This is the mindset that a lot of bad artists have, and it's just so puzzling and so, well, I wouldn't say it's puzzling. I understand it, but it's just so self-defeating. And it's like, come on, man. I mean, you can't be this stupid. Yes, they can be that stupid. Go ahead, ask me what you were gonna say.
what I meant by that was like, okay, so I love Woody Allen,
Uh-huh.
right? And I think you have an article where you're rating. It's like from 1970. It's like from his very first movie from like the 60s to like I think it's up till 1993,
Yeah, something
something
like
like
that.
that.
Yeah,
And you have like scores.
yeah,
So I objectively and subjectively agree with you. I think his best movie is Stardust Memories,
mm,
which I like more than 8.5. I
yeah,
love 8.5, but it's a little too bloated. Like I think
mm,
some editing could make them equal, but anyway, you put because I think you on your greatness scale, it's like near great is in the 90s, and then 95 plus is great. I
mm,
think that's your
yeah,
greatness scale,
yeah,
correct?
yeah.
So you put Purple Rose of Cairo, you put that as an 87, but obviously, like, and again, I always let me figure out how to say this. So you put Purple Rose of Cairo as 87, but when I was watching it, I was really thinking. Like, I mean, it made me think about all these types of weird existentialist stuff. Like, would I want life to be perfect? You know, could you adapt to a life that's not perfect? Stuff like, or could you, all these types of really abstract concepts. I got a lot of stuff intellectually, and I didn't even think I was going to get that much intellectual merit from that movie. So because it's Woody Allen, because it's a great film, I'm assuming that's when subjectivity is appropriate, correct?
Well, yeah, and you were how old when you saw that movie?
I was 21.
Okay. Now, when I saw that movie, I had grown up watching the films, silent films, and Buster Keaton, for example, has a film. Oh, I forget the name of it, but Buster Keaton also breaks into a movie, and he did this 55, 60 years before the Allen, and it's not necessarily a better film than Purple Rose of Cairo, and I think Purple Rose of Cairo has the acting is not the strongest stuff in his canon. But I I'm going to come at it with a different perspective because I've seen different things and I have more knowledge about it. There are times when if I look back at something, the more that I know about it, and even with my own work, I'll give you an example. I told you I wrote 64 plays. The first two plays that I wrote were 51,000 and 59,000 words, and they were these two long plays. One was based on two women and it was a almost totally fictive play, and then the second one was based on my family, and they were very much in the vein of O'Neill and Williams and Arthur Miller. But they were I would argue that they were better than any of those plays. But when I look now at the last 15 or 20 plays that I've written, I'm so far beyond that when I look back, I'm like, well, they're still better than some of the great but flawed plays of the modern masses. But my plays now are so much richer. I'm doing so much more because I've written 50 plays or more in the interim. And the very act of going through the intellectual process of tunneling out and doing this and moving things has made me now, 3 years after I wrote that first play, much more informed about plays and playwriting and whatnot. And when I look back, even at my own early plays, they don't hold up. I can say that something is great. Let me put it another way. I can read some of the plays of Euripides or Aeschylus or who's the other one? Euripides, Aeschylus, and the third famous Greek tragedian, and I can appreciate some of the things they did. But none of those are great plays in a modern sense. I can read Shakespeare's greatest plays, and frankly, the greatest plays of Shakespeare don't measure up to the greatest plays of Shaw and Ibsen and O'Neill and Williams and Miller. They're better plays than modern masters. And in the same way, I can look at even my early plays and now my later plays, and I can see my early plays are several notches above the modern masters, and my later plays are several notches above that. And knock on wood, hopefully in 100 or 200 years, or lesser time, hopefully, there will be playwrights who will have read my stuff and moved beyond me. That's the way that it should be. And when you argue or try to say that The Tempest, which is a great play, one of the greatest of Shakespeare's play, but if you try to argue that The Tempest is as great a play as the best play of O'Neill, say The Iceman Cometh, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I mean, you really don't, because Shakespeare didn't have a grasp on the depth of humanity that the best of O'Neill did, and O'Neill doesn't have the grasp on the totality there, because my cosmos is necessarily larger than O'Neill's, which was necessarily larger than Shakespeare's, which was necessarily larger than the Greek tragedians, just like the world that I now at 55 is larger than when I was 35, larger than when I was 20, larger than when I was 10, 5, and just 5 months old. That's the way things happen. And you have these people like Harold Bloom that just want to suck on the nipple of Shakespeare till they bite it off. Either that no one will ever be greater than Shakespeare. Some guy once told me, "You'll never be greater than W.B. Yeats." You're an idiot. And there will be someone greater than me. And if there isn't, then we're really in trouble as a society.